Okay, we're at 6:30, so I will get us started. Welcome everyone to this evening's Cannabis Advisory Board meeting. I did want to just provide some background since we have a lot of new guests here this evening, just to clarify things and kind of state where we are in the process. My name is Mark Dorku, I'm the mayor of Morris Township this year. In our township committee form of government, our mayors rotate each year, and I've had the privilege of being mayor this year and last year. With me is Deputy Mayor Bud Ravitz, who's also on the township committee. And we're joined here at the table by 5 volunteer residents who agreed to be and volunteered to be on the Cannabis Advisory Board, along with some of our professionals, some of our clerk, and then we have some panelists tonight who will be discussing certain topics about the cannabis industry in New Jersey with us. Just to provide some context, back in 2021, the Township Committee opted out of the sale of cultivation and distribution of cannabis, all 6 classes as dictated by the state. The rationale behind the Township Committee's actions in 2021 to opt out of everything was to provide our town with the most flexibility as possible, with the intention to reevaluate our decision at a certain point down the road. After 2 years after this decision, the Township Committee thinks it's important to analyze the implementation of cannabis opt-ins across the state and study it in a thorough manner. Whether the township should revisit its 2021 opt-out ordinances is something that the Township Committee will decide after we report back to them. So what is the Cannabis Advisory Board? We're an advisory committee of volunteer residents who are here strictly for the purposes of evaluating the current state of cannabis in New Jersey, taking a look at it from an economic perspective and also a zoning perspective. After our meetings, which we're holding about six of, I think this is our 5th meeting, right, Tim?
Yes, sir.
6. After we meet, we will provide a written report that will be open to the public, to the Township Committee, providing a recommendation of whether or not opting in is something in the township's best interest. This committee, again, will not take any formal actions. We're an advisory committee. We purely serve as in an advisory function. We are unable to change any township ordinances or set any township policies. So tonight we have our first guest for the evening is Susanna Short, who's an industry leader in New Jersey in cannabis. She is well versed not only in state regulations, but also federal regulations, where she was earlier this month in DC advising members of Congress on banking standards for the cannabis industry, not only throughout the country, but it would have impacts here in New Jersey too. So Susanna's going to walk us through kind of a broad overview of how New Jersey's handling cannabis, how different municipalities are treating it, and she's also going to provide some answers to some of the questions that our board members had in previous meetings that we submitted ahead of time. So with that, if there's not any questions from our members first, I'll turn over to Sarah. One last thing I forgot to mention.
I started to share before.
That's okay.
Okay.
One last thing I forgot to mention. So our public comment session as part of our meetings will be on November 1st. We had previously said it would be October 26th at our last meeting, but we had some scheduling conflicts with our members, so we rescheduled it to November 1st. Folks who can comment if they're joining us in person or virtually on the 1st. So we'll probably have to go into the meeting room next door to accommodate members of the public. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susanna.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I appreciate the introduction, Mayor. I'll reinforce a couple of things to let you know a little bit more about who I am. And I think folks at home can see what's on the screen here as well. I apologize to those of you who I have my back to it. I feel very rude, but I'm glad that everyone is here to participate in this important discussion. So who am I? I am a mother. I'm a mother of an 11-year-old son who took Lego classes right in this building. I was saying earlier, I am a resident of Morris County, not of Morris Township. I live in Mendham Township. I have a Morristown mailing address on the east side. You'll be able to figure out all these things about me by the end of the night. I'm an active community member. I serve on the board of trustees for my son's school. I am a member of the Women's Association of Morristown Medical Center. I'm a member of the Junior League. And I am an active member of my parish, Assumption Church in Morristown. I'm also a volunteer at Market Street Mission. And it makes me sound really like a wonderful person. I struggle with all kinds of things every day too, but I'm really happy to have put down roots in this community. I'm originally from Philadelphia and have made New Jersey my home for the past 25 years. And I'm officially a Jersey girl and very proud of it. I've been a cannabis industry consultant for the past, I guess, almost 6 years now, just to give you a little bit of my professional background. My first job was working as a community organizer in Brooklyn, New York. I worked on several issues. Minority policing was one of them, affordable housing was another, ESL parent advocacy, and then the location of a methadone clinic in the neighborhood. So that was kind of my start in the world of community engagement. I went on to be a high school religion teacher. I taught religion in a Catholic high school. And then when I moved to Jersey, I started a college missions and SAT prep business which I ran successfully until I had a health incident that gave me quite a bit of empathy for patients, particularly those now in the medical cannabis program, who have had to take, their own healthcare into their hands and navigate some tricky things, and stigmas are often involved in that. I then went to work with my then husband as an executive in an insurance agency where I worked for a decade. We had 2 locations in Morris County and have all kinds of insurance licenses. So I have some professional experience with regulated industry. And then I found my way into the cannabis industry. Someone had approached me with a potential investment opportunity when Governor Murphy was campaigning the first time on a platform that included legalization within 100 days. And so I started to look into this from a due diligence perspective to see, is this a good investment? It was not a good investment, but in doing the research, I was like, oh my goodness, I called all the people I could read about on the internet, the head of the patient advocacy group, some of the folks writing the laws, some of the social justice warriors, I'll call them, here on the scene, and started to attend networking conferences and then started to work with different organizations and associations. And before long, I carved out a little niche for myself as a consultant in the industry, and that's what I've been doing. So as a consultant, I have clients. I work with them on a variety of things, sometimes with application assistance at the state level, and sometimes locally if there's a municipal application that needs to be completed. I work with government and regulatory affairs, so I speak with the policymakers at the state level and at the federal level, as we've discussed. I consult for executive leadership teams, so I'm in on meetings where they're making decisions about grow lights and expanding canopy and what security team will we employ, and all those sorts of things. So I really do have a window into the operations. I also do a lot of corporate social responsibility work for my clients, which I love, helping them figure out how to be good corporate citizens and how their mission and vision might align with the locations in which they're located. And then I do some compliance work, kind of as par for the course. One of the things that I did and I'm most proud of is to co-found the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association, which is a trade association open to any license holder in the state of New Jersey. So we have some of the original 6, they're called. These are folks who were licensed under the Christie administration as the medical operators. Those folks have fully vertically integrated licenses. They have cultivation, manufacturing, and retail licenses. And then more recently, as this market has begun to expand, we now have some membership for folks who are standalone license holders, standalone cultivators, standalone dispensaries, some of whom still operate in the medical program and have expanded to adult use, some of whom are only adult use, some of whom have stayed in medical. So it's a really great, cross-section of industry operators that I interact with on a daily basis. And I'm hoping to share some of the, experiences and insights from that work with all of you today. Last bullet point on this page says I'm not an attorney. I've been told I'm a great fake lawyer, but I'm not actually a lawyer. And even if I were, of course, anything that I'm sharing could not be legal advice, is not legal advice. So don't, put me on under oath or anything like that. But it's all real, true information. Okay, so here's my state of the state, the licensing landscape. This next slide here is taken just from the Cannabis Regulatory Commission's website, from one of their recent public meetings. So as you can see here, there's been over 2,000 applications for licenses submitted in the state. That's a whole lot. And there have been over 1,000 of them have been approved. Now, some are still making their way through the pipe here, but of those 1,440 that have been approved, 1,208 of them have been conditional licenses. What that means, and at any time you guys can just say, oh, we know it, just stop, we don't care, or you're repeating yourself, or we know this. But there's been over 1,000 conditional licenses. To apply for a conditional license, you do not need municipal approval. real estate, or financing in order. So you do a preliminary approval. This was a way to try to give, a head start for some folks who you have to have less than $200,000 in income in your previous tax returns. So it's a way to try to say, we really want to diversify and make this an opportunity for, more New Jerseyans. So there's a lot of folks who have gotten an award, but really aren't to the finish line yet, right? And then there are some folks who are at the finish line. 55 of them are what are called expanded ATCs. ATC stands for Alternative Treatment Center. These are the medical operators, and they had the opportunity to expand into adult use. They still are medical, and now they've expanded. And then there are 97 annuals. Those are folks who out of the gate applied with municipal approval, with compliant real estate, and with financing in order. And they've gotten their stamp of approval from the state and are closest to operationalizing. Some of them have actually operationalized. There's 287 operating licenses, right?
Susan, just quick
Yes.
question. Of the ones that were approved?
Yes.
The 97?
Yeah.
That's across all license types?
It is, yes. And this doesn't break it down. I'm happy to get you those numbers if
Okay.
you're curious.
I would love to see those numbers.
Yes.
Okay. So here's something that gets at some of the numbers. Right now, we have 45 open dispensaries. So these are the Class 5 retail shops. We're in 18 counties. We're not in Salem County, Cape May County, or Sussex County. The very first dispensary in Morris County opened within the past couple of months. That is, you see down here in the bottom right, I say the closest dispensary to Morris Township is Kind Kush, right? That's in Rockaway. That right now is the closest. Here's the distribution by county. I've put on this little map here where all the dispensaries are. If it's yellow, it's just recreational cannabis. If it's red, it's recreational and medical. It's worth noting, yes,
These are dispensaries.
dispensaries only, yes.
So you mentioned the conditional license.
Sure,
Any applicant for that has to have an income below 200,000 in the prior year?
all owners, yes. who are
So it
board
can't be
members.
like some corporate entity out of California or something like that?
Usually not unless every member of that entity happened to show less than $200,000 on their tax returns from the year before. Could be.
So you could have a California entity with 10 members, each of has below 200,000?
No, that's a micro business. So micro business is different than conditional. Micro businesses can have a maximum of 10 employees. All ownership needs to be from New Jersey, meaning any investor, right, who's given an equity needs to be from within New Jersey. And 51% of the employees need to be in the town where you're locating or adjacent to the town. This was an attempt to lower the bar to entry. I could talk for a while about whether it actually does or not, but that does exist. Micro businesses are allowed to. They have some restrictions. They can only have 2,500 square feet of canopy. I'll get into what canopy is. Basically smaller operations. Mayor, did you have a
No,
question?
and these are dispensaries.
Dispensaries.
So
These
I
are
know
dispensaries. Yep.
our members were interested in seeing the map of Toll, but this is helpful to know.
Yes.
for dispensaries.
Yes, and
Thank you.
here's the list of locations for cultivation and manufacturing. Right now, we only have 13 of them in the state. Belmar is with a W, right? So that's in Camden County. It's not the beach town. That's our largest in the state right now. Close to here, I guess, what do we have close to here? Patterson's not too far. Boonton, yep, that's Terrace End.
Aquanics.
Branchburg isn't far, yeah.
It's right there.
Right, so there are folks around here. Egg Harbor Township happens to be hosting 2 of them.
So,
yes.
so these businesses have to supply all the dispensaries in New Jersey, correct?
That's correct,
And
yep,
all the dispensaries are relying on these 12
Yep.
businesses?
13, yep. And a couple of them are medical only actually at this point still. Here's the retail dispensary locations. There are 53 now. So that other slide said 45. That was from the September meeting of the CRC. We're up to 53 now. 6 of them are medicinal only, and I've marked those with an asterisk. Yeah, the asterisk says if it's medicinal only. And other than that, it's either a co-located or an adult use facility.
Does
So-
that include pending a retail?
No, these are operational retail.
Do you have a sheet on pending, like such as Morristown?
I don't believe anybody does. In Morristown, the only one that's pending in Morristown is on Ridgedale Avenue. Is it 102 Ridgedale Avenue? It's a company called Uma Flowers, which is out of Massachusetts. They were given their local approvals about 18 months ago. They were a conditional applicant with the state. This is all public information.
Yes.
Conditional applicant with the state, and they got their, they are, I believe, going to be considered on this Thursday's meeting, October 19th, at the state level, CRC, for their annual approval, in which case then they should be able to proceed with building out the facility and everything.
That's from the border with Morris Township, correct?
Very close to it, yes. I mean, maybe 5 buildings away, something like that,
Thank you.
right? Yeah, and it's definitely something to consider, you know, when if you are going to locate these here. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about cultivation facilities. This was an A to the Q, to one of the Qs. What are the specs that are required for them? What do these look like, smell like, all that kind of stuff. So these are typically what we're seeing in New Jersey. They're converted warehouse spaces. I have some pictures, so you'll be able to see those in a minute. Greenhouses are allowed, but they are used less frequently. Boonton does have both a warehouse space and a greenhouse facility. Some of you may have been there. The greenhouse facilities in New Jersey typically are being used to produce biomass. What that means is it's not the highest quality of flower. They're taking it and putting it into some of the manufactured products, which I'll get into in a moment. Outdoor grows are allowed by the state. Nobody's doing it, and the municipality may consider specifically allowing for or prohibiting outdoor grows. That is a move that some municipalities have made. Something to consider, indoor grows are very energy intensive, right? So even if there is a warehouse facility that's available, it may not have the necessary power available, and it can take quite a long time for the power company to supply that power. The canopy at each of the operational facilities. Canopy is the mature flowering plant. When I show you some pictures, this will be illuminated a bit more, but in February of this year, the average canopy size was 25,000 square feet per facility. So that's the mature flowering plant. The total facility size is usually 2x to 4x that canopy size, because canopy is the plant that's almost ready to harvest or is ready to harvest. Now, once you harvest the plant, you still have to deal with it. It's still in the facility, right? So you're trimming it, you're drying it, you're packaging it. That's all taking up space in the cultivation facility. Before it becomes a mature flowering plant, it starts out as a baby plant or clone, right? And then it grows and it gets to its vegetative state, and then it makes buds, and that's when it's a part of the canopy. We also have mothers. This is a very female-centric plant. There's the mothers are the crown jewels. It is the female plants only that do flower and produce the active part of the plant. So what we're looking at, because of this 2x to 4x and the 25,000 and all of this, a facility can range. I'm sorry. Let me tell you first. The canopy size, the mature flowering plant. The state has different tiers allowed. It goes from 2,500 square feet, that's for a micro business. Micro business is limited to 2,500 square feet, all the way up to 150,000 square feet of canopy. So then if you do your math, right, the total facility size is going to be anywhere from 10,000 square feet up to 350,000 square feet. Quite a big range. Most are not at the lower or the higher end of either of those. Most are somewhere kind of in the middle. And one more thing I would recommend, if you are going to host a cultivation facility, you will want to know what the applicant's plans are for odor mitigation. There are wonderful odor mitigation systems that are available, and I'd invite you to visit some of the facilities and go inside and smell them and go outside and not smell them. But you want to make sure that whoever you do host, especially if they're anywhere near a residential or anything like that, residents may complain about the odor if it's not mitigated. Okay, here's what one looks like. Yay, there's a bit of a delay. This is Egg Harbor Township. This is a cultivation facility. It looks basically like an office, right? Industrial warehouse space. Here's Vineland. Here's Belmar. No, just kidding. Come on. Ohio. This is the outlier, sorry. It's a really good representation of what a lot of them do look like, so I included it. It's the only one from outside of New Jersey that you'll see tonight. Inside, here's what they look like inside, okay? So you have these kinds of rooms that are, sometimes just the size of a storage trailer. You're gonna see lights, you're going to see plants, you're gonna see racks and trays and fans and wires. This is a bit more further along in the life cycle of the plant. You see people. Some of them have tiered racking systems. Just kind of a close-up look at the plant. These are some clones, right? So they'll start growing and sometimes in a tissue culture or some hydroponically. This is a hydroponic system right here. Just plants, plants, plants. I'm gonna blow through some of these. Okay, so now do you see these have buds on them, right? So you see how they're different. It's not just the leaves. And that's a bud close up before it's harvested. There's another one, another one. So they're really, they got these sticky things on the outside of them. The trichomes, they're called. There they are. The trichomes are beautiful. I think it's a beautiful plant. Okay, now here's what's happening is it's being dried. Okay, so it'll be harvested, they'll be dried and cured. Some of them are what's called flash frozen right away, and then it's made into a live resin product. But most of the time you're doing some sort of drying. There are systems that will facilitate the drying of these products and the curing. And then we have people who do the trimming. And so that's what this woman here in this picture is doing and what this man in this picture is doing. So they're, getting rid of the stalky pieces and some of the leaves. And now what this person is doing, this is still in a cultivation, or these people are still in a cultivation facility. They are making pre-rolled joints. So each one of those tubes there, is filled with some of the ground up cannabis flower, dried flower, and then they're being put into those packages that you see in the front there, and that's what will be sold in the dispensary. Okay, questions about cultivation facilities?
Yeah, I have
Yes.
a quick question. You
Sure.
mentioned for cultivation, we need to understand what each facility is going to do about odor mitigation. Is that something the state regulates in terms of here are the things you need to consider about odor mitigation, or is it a matter of best practices?
Yeah, yes and no. So I should actually globally say that the state has a ton of regulations for so many things, right? And you still have local control. And just because something works for the state or is compliant for the state doesn't necessarily mean, of course, it's going to work in Morris Township. So it is absolutely within your right to require stricter standards than what the state requires. You can't be more lax than what the state requires, but you can, of course, be stricter. And odor mitigation, as far as odor mitigation goes, the state does require, as part of the application, that you submit an odor mitigation plan to the state. There are some regulations around odor mitigation, but in my opinion, what the state regulations say about odor mitigation is just mitigate odor. It doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. And I've worked with the regulator around some considerations. The regulator usually says preemptively when they're about to give approval or not give approval for a site, they want to make sure everybody in the area is notified, and they say, because they want the industry to do well, make sure you're giving particular consideration. That's one place. That's why I put on my slide, I'd say go harder on that one.
Question, it looks like a lot of the growth is hydroponic.
Some of it, yeah.
Some of it, not all of it.
Yep.
I'm understanding that there's been some improvements in odor mitigation technology. Can you comment on that?
Sure. So some of my clients use these carbon filtration systems. Some of them use it's not reverse osmosis. That's not the word, because that of course only applies to water. I do remember my chemistry class enough. But there are some reverse where certain elements of the air can be taken out and trapped. And some of these systems, I have to say, look quite rudimentary. Some of them look like corrugated cardboard on the side of a wall, but actually get at the issue. And then there are a number of manufacturers that produce, filtration systems and trap all of these odors, clean the air, and recirculate it.
A quick question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I know that there's two different licenses, one for cultivation, one for processing and manufacturing. If they're doing pre-rolls in the cultivation facility, where's that line?
It actually, so that is, when you actually get a cultivation license, it says you're approved for cultivation and processing. When you get the other one, it's manufacturing. Processing is really just the handling of the dried flower.
Uh-huh.
So if there isn't any extraction or changing of the form of the flower other than to chop it up or, put it in some kind of jar or package, then it's still in cultivation. So making pre-rolls you're authorized to do that as a cultivator.
And could that be done in either or do like for
It could be, but you
efficiency's
kind of
scale, do they
wouldn't.
just all do pre-rolls because they?
Yeah,
there's
you
no
kind
reason to
of
pace
wouldn't,
them out.
because you would, but so a manufacturer is able to purchase biomass or any sort of flower from a cultivator. they can then decide to turn it into any compliant product that they want, including a pre-roll. We're not seeing that happen, but
Okay.
it could happen.
A quick question.
Sure.
The pictures that you showed us of the cultivation, the indoor cultivation facilities, they seem to be all standalone buildings. To your knowledge, do you know of any that are sharing
Sure.
space
With a
with
dispensary.
other, well, not necessarily with other licensee types, but sharing space with other types of businesses?
Yeah, and so in Secaucus, it's part of an industrial park, and even Egg Harbor Township, there's some other businesses in that same compound.
Mhm.
Secaucus looks similar to Egg Harbor Township. That was the first one that I showed you, and I can't figure out how to go back on this. I'm sorry, I'll screw it all up. But the Secaucus has, it's an office park essentially,
Right.
and even in the same, contiguous walls are other businesses. In Woodbridge, it's part of a shopping center type area. So yeah, it does happen.
It does mix.
I think
Yeah.
what your question was also,
You're-
because I think we had
You're
that
talking about different classes,
visualization
right?
of like a stacked office building.
I'm talking about, I'm talking
I
about when
think
sharing
that's what you were
space
thinking, yeah.
with another business that has nothing to do with cannabis.
Yep, that's allowed as long as you allow it. Some of the exclusions at the state level, I don't think you'd be contemplating. You can never locate a cultivation facility on the same property as a correctional facility, as a school, I don't think you guys are
Well,
gonna
there
do
goes
this,
prison
right?
labor.
But there are some exclusions, but a standard, typical business, it's not an exclusion.
Thank you.
So it almost
You
sounds
could
like
choose to.
any space could be repurposed.
Yeah, it
You
could
need
be.
height
I mean,
though, right?
it's
So
whatever
you
makes
might
sense for you.
include like office buildings, right? 'Cause you
I'm
probably-
sorry, what was your question?
The cultivation facilities would probably need a lot of height though.
Not necessarily. So a micro business may only end up, so did you see there's the tiered
Yeah,
rack systems,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But these are, some folks start out and even end up with shipping containers. They're growing inside of shipping containers. And I don't even think that's a standard wall height. I don't know. I
Right,
think
if
so.
you're gonna
I've been
gonna
in them, I kinda
stack,
have
you'll
to
want.
Go like that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, it's all like what's being planned, what makes sense. Yes,
Can I ask a quick question?
of course.
You talk about a lot of regulation around these sort of grow facilities. I don't see any mention of security. I'd imagine some of these
I'm gonna talk
facilities-
about it.
You
We'll
will.
talk about it.
Great,
Absolutely,
thank you.
yes.
And just a time check, we're at 6:58
Okay,
and you're going
okay.
to 7:30.
Okay, all right, here we go. Manufacturing facilities. So these are often co-located with cultivation facilities, meaning that the grow and the processing, manufacturing are on the same site. I've seen exceptions to the drug-free school zone requirement for cultivators or manufacturers that don't have a dispensary, just an FYI. The regulatory fee breaks the structure into two levels, under 10,000 square feet or over 10,000 square feet. Most of these processing facilities are under 10,000 square feet. So as you're planning for that, the equipment that's inside of these facilities is similar to a laboratory, a pharmaceutical facility, or a commercial kitchen. And I'll have some pictures of this in a minute. So what happens is there's the extraction of the phytochemical components. This can be done with or without solvents. Some of the solvents that are used are ethanol, hydrocarbon. For that, you need a C1D1 room, or carbon dioxide. So these are put, and then the products that are made are vape, tinctures, topical creams and oils, gummies, shelf-stable food products, and beverages. So here's what happens. Whoops, sorry. They take all the stuff, right? You saw the last one very quickly. This is essentially chopped up plant material. And then it can get put into machines like this, where they're extracting the oils from it. This is another machine doing something similar. This is called a rotovap. So essentially, burning off some of the solvent to get it very, very concentrated. This is the concentrated liquid. Again, concentrated liquid. Looks very different than the flour at this point. Here it is. These are all the forms it can take. This person here is filling some of these little jars with presumably a tincture of some sort. And then it can be used in commercial kitchen. Only recently did the state authorize edibles beyond some gummy products.
Is that eggs?
Yes,
Oh.
yes. So as long as something is sheltered, we're not seeing it be made because the state only approved these types of products about a month ago. I think I heard Verano's coming out with a caramel very soon. And then these are, of course, vape cartridges that are made. Okay. Can I move on?
Yep.
Okay, retail facilities. So the size of these retail facilities can be very small, around 1,500 square feet, or be as big as 5,000 square feet. My humble estimation is somewhere around 2,500 to 3,500 square feet is probably a good size for a township like Morris Township. The average, this is in response to certain questions that I was asked, how many customers per day are you going to see? I can tell you what's happening right now in the state, and it's a big range. So some of the newer dispensaries that aren't yet established are seeing maybe only around 100 per day. Some of those that are more established can hit 500 to 700 a day, with up to 1,000 on the busiest days. Now, changing market conditions are going to cause variation in these numbers. So I expect that we'll have around 250 to 350 stores at maturation in the state. Right now, we have about 50. 250 to 350. We're at about 50 right now, right? So what's going to happen? Well, we're not, and also we don't have delivery yet in an operational way, right? B2C. Once we do, fewer people will actually go to stores. All of these things are going to impact the numbers of how many people are actually going to be at the store. What do some towns do? They require traffic studies, right? All these sorts of things that the applicant may have to produce if you're going to locate something somewhere. So those are all considerations. Questions about this? Yes.
What do you think is the biggest driving factor of that 250 to 350? Like, what's that? Like,
So part of it has to do with the municipalities. Although the state has not capped the number of retail licenses, municipalities have, many of them have, and many of them are opting back in after having opted out. You guys did absolutely the right thing by, taking some time. You had a short window in which you had to make a decision. Best to preemptively opt out and then take some time to consider whether it does make sense or not. We have about 60% have opted out. I think that will be more like 30% will opt out in the end, 20 to 30%. And some municipalities are only allowing one. We've got 565 municipalities here in the state of New Jersey. And some municipalities aren't capping them at all. I've got some numbers on that in a minute too.
To get to the 250 to 350 at what you think is maturation, how many years are we looking at from the 53 that we're currently seeing now?
I think it's going to be just a couple of years. I think just
So
a
a
couple
short
of years.
window to get to
Yeah,
maturation.
2 to 3 years.
Betty, you had a
Susanna?
question?
Yes.
In terms of access to the retail facilities, are they all over the place in terms of open access? I know that there was conversation about having appointments for individuals to
Okay.
go into retail facilities. What does that look like?
So there had been when it was just a medical program that was more of that. This is something you're going to want to ask the applicant to say, what are their plans? So, I go in front of municipalities a lot for my clients. And sometimes I say one thing and sometimes I say another thing because the clients have different plans, right? And they're locating in different places depending on what's going to be happening. Nobody right now is only by appointment only to come in. But I have a client who 80% of their orders are done online and people are simply coming and picking up, right? So they're not really spending very much time at all inside. I will say that, globally, this doesn't work unless it works for the municipality, right? It just doesn't. So businesses understand that and are figuring out, how do we control lines? How do we control traffic? If you have a grand opening or it's just open, yes, there's going to be some activity, right? But things level out and we're really not seeing people have long-standing issues with these businesses. So here's what some of the exteriors look like. This is Patterson. I'm just going to blow through these. Atlantic City. Vineland, Voorhees, this is part of a larger shopping center. Eatontown, also you can see part of a larger shopping center. This is Breakwater in Cranberry, part of an industrial park. These are all retail facilities. Plainfield is standalone here. Freehold, I think this is a beautiful building, standalone. Valley Wellness, this is right in Raritan. You can see there's an appliance store just adjacent to it. Zenleaf is in Elizabeth. This is in Elizabeth. They have 3 locations. Here's a Bordentown location. This is one of the largest operators in the state. This is an old Walmart here, this Garden State dispensary. This is an adorable building in Roselle Park. Old banks make fabulous dispensaries. There's already a vault in there. There's security, and it's beautiful. This I included because it includes some of the hours. This was like an old hoagie shop. Now I'm showing my South Jersey, my Philadelphia. I don't even know, what do you guys call them, subs? Yeah, okay.
Definitely subs.
This is Jersey City. This makes sense in Jersey City. This is in Deptford, next to an insurance agency. This is in Lambertville, consistent with the town there. This is Montclair. I wish I had this is just right on the street front. It's, the whole main street. Halladin, kind of a Main Street vibe to it too. Standalone in Lawrence. This is Neptune. It's in the middle of a shopping center. New Brunswick is in a commercial district, downtown commercial district. Rochelle Park, you can see there's a storage facility behind it. And then I want to show you some interior spaces. Beautiful, beautiful spaces.
It's like the Apple Store. Yeah, it
They're,
does.
they're gorgeous spaces.
The Genius Bar.
And of course, you can ask your, your applicants to share renderings and let you know what they're planning. There is some variation here. I'm just blowing through these. The bulk of these slides are these pictures, but I want to make sure you get all the information too. So there's some variety, right? I mean, they don't all look exactly the same, but for the most part, they've got a really clean look. Okay, tax revenue.
Just a quick
Yes.
question. You showed one picture that looked like a series of screens, so they must be
Yes.
ordering screens where you
So
place an
sometime,
order?
I don't know which way the screens were facing, but most of the time what happens in the dispensary is you come in and if you haven't pre-ordered it on this screen, then you're pulling, there's an iPad type kiosk where folks are
Right there, then
ordering.
they just give it to
You can also go up and then they'll separate you into a line if that's how you ordered, or if you want to go up and you want to talk to somebody, then that's, typically a separate line.
Suzanne, can I
Yes.
ask a quick one? Hopefully quick. Are there any provisions that permit, at least in the state regs, drive-through retail facilities?
Yeah,
Are those
during
permitted?
COVID, there were a lot of, some things were loosened up.
Right.
So nobody is actually doing that, but they're moving toward it.
$1 million idea.
Yes, hopefully at least that much, we'll see. All right, so I had to do some extrapolation here. There was a question about how much money can we make here. And you can check my math on it here. I went off of the Q2 recreational sales in the state. Now, this is not, we're expecting that as we get more doors open, we're going to, of course, have more sales, and then at a certain point, it will level off. These numbers were at a time when there were approximately 40 open dispensaries during Q2. So I did some math. It came out to about $320,000 in municipal tax revenue for a retail license annualized. And then did the wholesale math. It was about $534,000 in municipal tax revenue for classes 1 and 2, combined manufacturing processing, annualized. Now, that was with only 12 of these, right? So again, these numbers are going to go up, go down. I will share with members of the board. I'd be happy to show these slides. All right, notable. These are averages. I just said that, right? Historically, there's been a wide range from the lowest to the highest. So it's worth noting that at one point in the medical program, one of the operators had 60% of the market share, right? So not every municipality is going to extract the same tax revenue. Our current canopy sizes are anywhere from 2,000 square feet to over 70,000 square feet. Again, wherever you are at that continuum, so you've got to ask your applicants, what are your business plans? How much are you anticipating making? And supply and demand economics are going to impact these sales numbers in years to come. One thing that we're advocating for at the state level are canopy caps. If all 1,204 of these licenses get operationalized and everybody puts 150,000 square feet of canopy, we will be burning this stuff in the streets and not making any money, completely losing money. No one will make any money. And then, of course, just regular supply and demand things. I also want to note that we don't yet have any data to project revenues for Class 4 wholesaler licenses. That's the other place you're able to charge tax revenue. Those haven't been operationalized yet. It's a Class 4 license. I pulled some budgets for you guys. Okay, so here's Phillipsburg, 2023 budget. If you take a look on the far right, this was how much cash. By the way, Phillipsburg didn't start adult use cannabis sales until 4/20 of 2022. In 2022, starting 4/20, they made over $300,000 in tax revenue at one single dispensary. Phillipsburg is on the border with Pennsylvania. I suspect many folks did come in from Pennsylvania to purchase cannabis. Well, Phillipsburg had only planned for $138,000 in tax revenue. They got $329,000. They now are anticipating a $600,000 tax revenue from that one dispensary in 2023. Here's Belmar. Belmar brought in over $1 million. Again, sales just starting in 2022, in April of 2022. And they have, though, remember I said that 60% of market share? This is Curaleaf. They have the largest cultivator, manufacturer, and retailer, all located in Belmar. So they had anticipated 600,000, I think it says, or 650,000. They got over $1 million, and now they're budgeting for $1 million in revenue.
Excuse me, it's revenue, that's not tax revenue.
That is tax
That's
revenue.
tax revenue.
That is tax
That's
revenue.
net-
That is
net
2%.
Going to the town.
Yes, going to the town. That's how much the town is making.
That's the municipal budget.
Do you have any reflection points on how supply, I mean, obviously supply affects like tax revenue numbers, right? So knowing that there's at least one dispensary down the street in Morristown, how accurate, like for example, between whether it's Belmar or Phillipsburg, what is the closest dispensary and how much
Gotcha.
does it impact?
Let me talk about that on another slide where I have a bullet.
Just real quick,
Yes.
Paul, we'll share the slides after this too.
Cannabis revenue, here I just want to show Montclair, because maybe it's a similar size or whatever. They're projecting 250,000 for this year. They have just one Class 5 retailer. They had a longstanding, they were the very first dispensary in the state, but for medical. But they did not initially opt into adult use. They were realizing no tax revenue initially. Okay, so how many licenses are reasonable per population? This gets at your question a little bit, and there's a little more to it. So what do you need to consider? So first of all, I think this question only applies to retail. I don't think it applies to cultivation or manufacturing. And population is not the only variable to consider. You want to consider the number of licenses in the surrounding towns, the marketing efforts of that retailer. How good are they going to be at drawing people in? Where are they located in the municipality? How competitive is their pricing? How good is their their customer service? What I see some municipalities doing, I think is very smart, is not just limiting the number of retailers for the entire municipality, but also giving some thought to the zone. Like, so if we will allow one in this part of town and one in this other part of town to try to guard against, a situation where they're just too close. In the favor of a potential dispensary that may locate in Morris Township if you opt in, Hanover, Cedar Knolls, all these guys are opted out. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. Morris Plains, they're hard no for now. But Morristown, of course, has one and very, very close to Morris Township. My personal sense of this is that it doesn't matter if you have one dispensary in your municipality or 10. You're going to likely be making the same amount of tax revenue, whether you're at 1 or 10 retailers. It's just going to be divided up. There's a finite amount of business, and you want to be thoughtful about how you locate it relative to borders of other municipalities.
Got it. But if Morristown is a separate municipality, then technically you'd be potentially sharing. the
Absolutely, you would be, yeah. And now you could see some folks would say, oh, good, now it's worth me making a trip from Parsippany to that street that has 2 dispensaries on it. I'm going to hit them both up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see which one I like more. And hopefully it's Morris Township and they have better marketing or products or whatever, right?
Have you found, and I'm sensing that I know the answer to this, that when you're co-locating different license types in the same facility, that tax revenue is going to go way up as opposed to little standalones here and there?
So you're saying if the cultivation's in the same building as the dispensary?
Well, let's say, let's say manufacturing, retail. We know cultivation and manufacturing go together.
Right. So I don't think that doesn't totally add up to me. What I think the reason why we're seeing just an increase in tax revenue numbers is not necessarily because the dispensary is adjacent to the cultivation facility, but because that town is hosting, and I'm using town, I know we're in a township, and I mean, there's cities too. But because that town is opting in on all classes.
Okay.
But I don't believe it's a function of them having the same property where they're located.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, what's a town allowed to require in terms of security? These are hyperlinks down at the bottom. I've linked to the state law, that's CREMA, and I'm directing you to page 58. And then I've got the administrative code, which are the regulations, and I'm directing you to page 189. That will let you know what the state is requiring in terms of security. It is quite extensive. In red down at the bottom, I say a township application should absolutely require specific details about the applicant's safety and security plans. With my clients, what I always do is meet with the police chief before anything. The state, there's cameras, of course, required. The state has visibility into all those cameras. Many municipalities also want the visibility into those cameras.
And they can require that.
And they can require that. Yep, they can require that. There is nothing requiring armed or non-armed guards. You may have an opinion about whether you prefer one or the other. Typically, I think those decisions are best left up to a business that hear their reasoning for it, right? and then you decide if that makes sense for you or not. So there are some cases in which I'm finding very few cases in which a municipality is requiring stricter security than what the state requires, but you absolutely can do just that.
But in the case of the municipalities that are doing it, are they, do you know if they're adding additional staff to the law enforcement to monitor that, or that just becomes a responsibility?
No, I
of
haven't
the
seen that happen at all. No. There are some cases, I mean, this is going back to some of the early days where there were some agreements that were made between host communities and the businesses themselves where they said, we're gonna need you to buy some police scanners. You know, that kind of thing happened. I don't think it's being done quite as, regulating more, but I believe, and again, not legal advice, you can have host community agreements with businesses that locate in your municipality. Okay, how much cash is typically on hand? This was another question. And I want to just kind of give you a little bit of the landscape here. So the cultivators and the manufacturers, those who are not interacting with the general public, they have bank accounts. Everybody's got bank accounts, right? They're state chartered banks. They're transacting through ACH or electronic checks with their supplier, their partners. So there's no cash that's being kept at these cultivation manufacturing facilities. Dispensaries now, some of them are accepting debit cards, and they're noting that 40 to 60% of their sales, if they do accept debit cards, are occurring through debit card transactions. You'll want to verify with your applicants that cash transfers are going to be handled by armored cars and not employees carrying cash. Okay. Higher volume dispensaries typically have more frequent cash pickups. My clients are always advised that they schedule these armored pickups, of course, at irregular times, right? Delivery vehicles are unmarked. So, again, I can't say this is always the case. Would be the case for my clients. You're going to want to ask your applicants just that. We have seen some security breaches, not dispensaries though. Actually, what's happened is they've drained backup batteries of cultivation facilities. It's been inside jobs. They've gained access into vaults and taken some product. And very rare. And usually on holiday weekends, and now we're aware of this, and people have implemented new security protocols. And your applicant's security plans will indicate specific protocols related to cash management that may give you some comfort, right, as far as how it's handled once a person holds it in the dispensary, what happens with it. And as I say at the end here, not all businesses do or will do certain things, verify with applicants. It's hard for me to give you a number because it's all over the place. I have a client that I know doesn't let it get above $30,000 cash on site. And I have clients who are not much more than that, and some who are less than that. So I use 30,000 as kind of in the middle of the road. Some are clearing every day, or sometimes several times a day.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. You showed some regulations around security. Are those going both to the cash that's handled on site as well as, or those also going to the inventory of products?
Both.
themselves?
There's inventory control. Yeah, there's inventory control. There's cash management practices.
Okay.
But the onus of essentially what the state is saying is you have to have a safety and security plan that addresses these issues, right? And then there's certain very specific things you need to do, like your video recordings need to be kept in for a certain number of days, right? And these records, and you have to check IDs when they come into the facility, et cetera. But you'll want to review the safety and security plans with your law enforcement professionals, and you'll see that these sophisticated operators know what they're doing. You'll get some comfort from them.
Okay. Can you speak to whether or not there are any breaches, any incidents around the cash being stolen, ripped off in the inventory?
So security, as you know, involves deterrence, right, in terms of detection and response. And this security far exceeds the requirements of the security, and the operational realities of the security far exceeds anything we're seeing at banks, at anything else. These are not targeted. During some of the, the time surrounding the George Floyd stuff, there were some incidents in Atlantic City, I remember in particular, but that wasn't just targeting these dispensaries.
Okay. Wasn't legalized in New Jersey then, was it?
There was medical.
Oh, medical.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just about to bring us all home.
Right.
Okay, so what are the issues impacting the industry? Talked a little bit before this, access to capital. What I'm trying to tell you here is, this is a nascent industry, right? We're building the plane as we fly it. there's issues at the state level, and there's issues at the federal level. We don't have this all worked out. But we're working through things as we go. So it is hard for many applicants to have access to capital. You can't just go and get a regular loan, right? Real estate's also difficult. You can't locate in this, when you're zoning for this, you might think of the perfect place. Well, there may be a mortgage on that building and that bank says, no way, no how, I'm not going to allow this business to be in this facility. Municipalities are impacting our industry, and that's just fine. But FYI, so there's basically the state had certain policy goals for this program, and then there's local priorities, and sometimes those are in conflict, right? So sometimes the state has said something that they really want to do is right some of the wrongs that have been done through the historically disproportionate enforcement of these laws, and so they are putting that burden on these private companies to try to right some of those wrongs. The local municipality, we've seen at times, are saying, well, no, I want to make sure that I have an experienced operator in here. I want to make sure I have a well-funded operator in here. That's not necessarily my same priority. Or I want someone from my community, whatever it is, right? There may be a conflict. This is a highly regulated industry. This is not like you're, starting a business to sell popsicles. This is highly regulated. And so you really need to vet the candidates in order to optimize the outcomes. And then unregulated shops and products. These are really huge threats to our industry. And this is happening right here in Morris Township, being sold in a drug-free school zone. Okay, here's my little thing. I went to the store across the street from where my son attends school and bought these products. I bought these products. They're not regulated. These have lots of THC in them. You're welcome to pass them around. They're not open. When I walked into this store, and you can smell them. I would not recommend any of that. It's not been tested. It is not legal product.
Which store?
The vape shop on Speedwalk.
Chief Sherry, you hear that?
So there was no security.
Yes, we're aware of it.
No attendant there when I went in. That
He's
person,
fine. He's
that person was not in the front of the store when I entered. And there was no age gating, of course. Nobody's looking at my ID. This was on a table in that store. Rice Krispie treat, chocolate chip cookie, fudge brownies, 50 milligrams per package of regular THC.
It's labeled THC, because the question was, how did you know that there was THC in this?
In some cases, this right here says Delta 9. That's regular THC. And I'm happy to talk about hemp intoxicants and all that. Here we go. These are the products. This is their menu for flower products. The total THC, they're calling it THCA. What that means is, do we all know what that means? In the plant, there are over 100 cannabinoids in the plant. Cannabinoids that are most famous are THC and CBD. CBD, we know, doesn't have any intoxicating properties. THC, of course, is highly intoxicating. When THC is in the plant, it's THCA. It's the acid form of the plant, THCA. Once you decarboxylate it and remove the acid, it then becomes the intoxicating THC. How do you decarboxylate it? You burn it. So that's when it becomes intoxicating. These have 22.4%. The Farm Bill allows hemp to have less than 0.3% THC. They're saying this has 22.4%, 26.7%, et cetera, et cetera. Highly intoxicating.
Right.
Edible products are being sold with far more than the 10 milligram per serving allowable in the New Jersey CRC. The edible in CRC, the regulated program, a maximum serving size is 10 milligrams. Do you see these numbers of 5,000 milligrams, right? An average person who consumed 10 milligrams, if they're not a regular consumer, would be out of it, would be not able to lift their head up, okay? So that's happening.
So this is all illegal.
So that's the $1 million question. One of the things the association is doing, and I'm going to invite all of you to attend a reception we're having at the League of Municipalities, and I'd love to share a municipal toolkit that we have with you, because if you do nothing about opting in on this stuff, please pass a local ordinance that addresses this stuff, and we can help you with that.
You called it a vape shop. It's a vape shop on Speedwalk.
Yeah, smoke shop.
Okay.
Smoke shop.
Are these trying to skirt what appear, like this to me, I'm not necessarily calling myself an educated consumer,
Okay.
but my impression of this is that this is, like, they're basically saying they're below the legal limit of Delta 9 because it clarifies that it's less than 0.3. Are they playing with words?
Is that one at Delta 8 or is it still Delta? Do they say
It
how
just
much?
says less than 0.3 of Delta 9. My impression is that if they're under 0.3 of Delta 9, then it would still fall in that Delta 8 range.
So
But again, I'm not
yes
the
and no. So Delta 8 is also questionable. It's highly intoxicating. There's
Yeah, this
loopholes in
doesn't
the
say 8,
Farm
but
Bill. Let me just see this one, because I don't remember.
I don't think I understand the difference.
I don't
between
understand
between
anything about
deltas and
this.
THC.
No, so this is saying THCP, 3,000 milligrams of THCP. So it's another one of these, like there's another little tiny piece, right? And then
Yeah.
once you chew it or once you smoke it or whatever, now it's intoxicating. But they're saying they're saying D9, D11, D9, THCP. What they're saying is, we don't know what the heck
Yeah.
this is.
But I'm just saying,
But
because
it's
they're saying it's less
intoxicating.
than 0.3, I just think they might think that it's in that range.
Oh,
Maybe
I'm
it's
sure
not.
they want us
Yeah.
to think that, but there's
Yeah.
no way to verify this, right? And for sure, stuff that's being sold in that, so we have some recommendations for an ordinance, again, not legal advice, that can address all of these intoxicating things, all of these, problem stuff.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely, what's happening is there's a potential loophole in the Farm Bill that people are
Yeah.
exploiting and saying, this is hemp, this came
Yeah.
from hemp, it's fine,
Yeah.
right? It did come from hemp, it may have come from hemp, I don't know, because you don't know, once it looks like this, it turns out the exact same whether you took it from hemp or from cannabis.
Yeah,
So if it did come, what they're saying is this came from something that had less than 0.3%. They're also saying it has 3,000 milligrams of THC in it right now, but they're saying it came from something that had less than 0.3, so it's okay. And they
So-
just concentrated it.
To follow your thread, Susanna, I think your point is also that this is and with your industry in mind, this is a much greater threat to the community than going into dispensary where you have a gate, what did you call it?
Age gating.
Age
Mhm.
gating, and security and,
Tested
your
products.
son and his
Yes.
friends, when they go up to lunch at Assumption, are not potentially
Yeah.
going in and purchasing these
And
products.
you can't even see into these regulated shops, I don't know if you noticed, you can't, by state law, are not going to be able to see from outside, right? You can see everything that's happening at this shop. Okay, so if you were to opt in, potential benefits to Morris Township, again, this is a question. So tax revenues, of course, right? We've gone through that. Job creation, I want to give you a sense. Cultivation is going to create somewhere around 60 to 125 jobs. Manufacturing between 3 and 20, retail 20 to 30. You can get some licensing and renewal fees. We have some data that there's something called an economic multiplier for other businesses in town. So if this would happen more often when there were fewer dispensaries, but what's happening is when people come into a municipality to purchase from a dispensary, they're typically doing some other things while they're there too. They're filling up their car with gas, they're getting a $14 salad, or doing some of these other things. Now that happens more often when this is located where you can pop into one store and then pop into another store that may or may not be what you're contemplating. But oftentimes what I find more often than not, the Bubba Coos burritos or whoever would love for a dispensary to be located adjacent to them because people are going to now shop at their store too.
2 minutes.
Okay, anticipated regulation and unregulated market activity. We see safer products, less teen access, even reduced opioid misuse. Morris Township voters are in favor. I'm so excited. You guys already might know this, but I want to share this stat. In 2020, general elections, ballot question number 1, in your municipality had the greatest number of respondents versus the other 2 questions. 68.64% of your constituents voted yes to legalize cannabis with where it stated that you can charge a tax at the municipal level. That was higher than the state average of 67.08%. And our state was higher than any state ever for this question. So your residents have said yes to this. And then another sort of parting
We've been
thought
waiting
here.
for those numbers, it's great to see it, but
Yeah,
we're
there
you
talking
go.
about this very question.
And that's a hyperlink that will take you to right where I got that from. Okay, concluding thoughts. Thoughtful approach is best, but you can have paralysis by analysis, right? If you keep going over and over this. I do believe the timing is right. Just as far as when people have opted in, opted out, maturation, number of suppliers, all these things. If you were to opt in by the end of this year or early next year, it's going to take a business a bit of time to get their licenses and get off the ground. That's pretty much going to be the sweet spot for operationalizing. When we're stuck in here, I want to get this in. And you have a lot of control, even if you do opt in. You can kind of get cute with this and say, we're going to authorize up to 1 Class 5 retailer. If you decide you don't like any of the applicants, you don't have to do anything, right? And you can impose specific penalties for non-compliance, and that's another revenue generating mechanism. I would encourage you just to optimize the chances of success for a local business if you do intend to host. It needs to be something that works for the business and works for the municipality. And that obviously goes both ways. The mission and vision of these companies needs to be consistent with what you're hoping for your municipality. And then everyone needs to be flexible as laws and market conditions change. That's it.
We have next guest, but you can.
Just
one question.
real quick, we talked tonight about cultivation, manufacturing, retail, but there's also wholesale, transport, and delivery.
Yep.
I know we haven't touched on that tonight. Some of the other guests in previous sessions did talk about it. Do you have anything to add real quick on any of those?
We just opened
categories?
applications September 27th. For those, it's going to take a while for the state to even give those licenses out. Wholesaler and distributors, I don't see any reason why a municipality would not host that business. Honestly, any one of you, I don't know why you wouldn't. But I don't think it's the most viable business type right now because you're not mandated to use a distributor. And the market's just not big enough for folks to have to distribute it. But I don't see any reason why a municipality would opt out of that. Delivery, same thing. Here's something with delivery. The retailers can all do delivery as well. And of course, you know that you can't prohibit delivery into your municipality. So great that Hanover, Cedar Knolls, Morris Plains, et cetera, have opted out because if you host someone who's doing delivery, you're going to make all that revenue off of those.
It's like having a second
deliveries.
dispensary.
Yeah, it majorly outsizes the retail footprint.
Clarification question, a retailer can do their own delivery, do they have to have a separate license for delivery? Or no?
Yes and no, it depends on a few little intricacies of the state, whether they're medical, not medical.
Let's assume they're recreational.
Yeah, so it is a function right now, the class 5 retailer, that they are able to deliver, but they still need municipal approval. And they have to submit a specific delivery plan. They don't need a separate class 6 license, but many of them are getting it. It gives them a little more flexibility about where they can pick things up from and all that.
It's usually the same business, so they'll get a
Yeah,
second
class
license.
6 doesn't need a class 5. Delivery doesn't need a retail, but retail can also do delivery.
Susanna, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate you
Thank
going
you.
through that
Yes,
really
thank you.
quickly
Very
and
nice.
answer our
Great.
questions. We invite you to stick with us if you can
I'm
for about
gonna be
30
here.
minutes and
Yes.
hang out afterwards to answer other questions we have. And I am now going to invite John Wright from the Bank Street Collective up. You want to spread out? So
Where do you want my
seats.
seat? Take my seat.
Ron,
I can take my seat.
You stay, Suzanne.
Okay.
Thanks.
So do you need access to the pit?
No, I'm just gonna be speaking.
Okay.
We've been through the ringer, so.
So, let me
Yeah.
just so Jerron Wright is a township resident. He's a co-founder of the Bank Street Collective, who applied for a retail license in Morristown, right? And he wanted to talk to us about his experience in Morristown, going through their process. As we know, last meeting we had Frank Vitolo talk about his clients' experience going through the process in Morristown. So Jerron reached out to see if he to ask for time to talk about his experience. So Jerron, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that. Susanna, thank you for that. Very insightful. You had a bunch of information in there that really solidifies our journey and the things that we've been through already. Good evening, esteemed members of Morris Township Cannabis Advisory Board, community members, fellow stakeholders. I am Jerron Wright, as Mark had mentioned, joined here with my brother Damon Mitchell in the back, co-founder and managing partner of the Bank Street Collective. I'm a father, husband, son, former member of the Morris Township Environmental Commission, and a social equity entrepreneur. We sit before you tonight representing more than just a budding business in the Bank Street Collective. Since November 2021, we have not only been visionaries, but also resilient stakeholders in this rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Our experience has led us to solidify a holistic vision of municipal partnership coupled with community education. Our journey began as a simple dream, a 100% family-owned and operated, vertically integrated cannabis venture, but quickly transformed into a mission to merge seamlessly into the heart of Morris County, offering more than just products, but a holistic experience grounded in trust and community engagement. Our experience and position as a Class 5 conditional retail license holder, as awarded by the NJCRC, speaks to our rigorous commitment to compliance and ethics. But it hasn't been an easy road. In Morristown, we endured an extensive application process. And although we own property zoned aptly for retail, our application was not selected for recommendation to the council by their Cannabis Advisory Board. Our application, along with those of 4 other potential operators, were denied crucial municipal support that the NJCRC requires to do business in this industry. So we cannot stress enough the importance of securing municipal support in order to convert our conditional Class 5 retail license into an annual license. Our journey underscores the challenges in the current cannabis landscape in New Jersey. Reflecting on our nation's history, we're reminded that George Washington, our founding father, was an industrial hemp farmer. This history underscores the importance of the cannabis plant, not as a mere commodity, but as an integral part of our American heritage. Our intent at the Bank Street Collective is twofold: to operate a top-tier cannabis business and to re-educate our community on the significance of this plant by disproving myths and highlighting historical truths. We're fostering a dialogue that normalizes informed and responsible cannabis consumption. Despite New Jersey's progressive stance on cannabis, less than 40% of our municipalities have embraced the first phase of cannabis integration. This cautious approach, compounded by lack of real estate and zoning intricacies, has been a formidable barrier to entities like ours, even with legitimate licenses. The voices of Morris County have resonated with us profoundly. Through numerous engagements, surveys, town hall meetings, and individual discussions, we found a collective enthusiasm for an ethical, transparent, and proactive cannabis operation. We've secured over 200 local signatures in support of our business venture. These engagements informed our comprehensive regulatory compliance plan, ensuring that our operations not only align with state regulations, but also address local concerns and aspirations. Our plan is more than just a document, it's a pledge, a guarantee that we prioritize safety, quality, and community feedback above all else. We're not just about business, we're about betterment for our community and for Morris Township as a whole. The economic imprint we aim to leave encompasses job creation, the stimulation of local businesses, and a commitment to funneling a portion of our revenues into community development. A significant facet of our commitment lies in our stringent regulatory compliance plan. Our team boasts professionals with years of experience in both national and international cannabis markets, like Lee Barton, our attorney from CSG, Chiesa Shannon, and Gian Tomasi, a former New Jersey Assistant Attorney General, who has been recognized as one of New Jersey's most impactful cannabis attorneys. Our promise is to uphold the highest industry standards, ensuring that Morris Township remains at the forefront of responsible cannabis retail. Our promise to the environment is non-negotiable. We've made strides to implement sustainable farming practices, water conservation, and waste reduction. Our packaging sourced from biodegradable materials reflects our commitment to minimizing our carbon footprint. And our proactive involvement in local green initiatives is just the beginning of our environmental journey. Safety and community well-being drive our operational ethos. Our security blueprint, which we eagerly wish to align with local law enforcement's expertise, is comprehensive, focusing on CCTV coverage, controlled access points, and stringent staff training. We believe in proactive collaboration with authorities to ensure a seamless and secure operation. Our ongoing discussions with like-minded partners, such as Dr. David Hodges and his son Miles, who joins us here today, exemplify our broader objective: synergizing expertise, resources, and a vision for the collective benefit of Morris Township. These potential collaborations could bring cultivation and retail together, as they hold a cultivation license at this point in time, ensuring quality control from seed to sale. In closing, our journey thus far has been enlightening and humbling. Lined with challenges, lessons, and milestones, we stand at a juncture, hopeful and eager, aiming to secure your guidance, support, and partnership. Let's craft a narrative where cannabis, deeply rooted in history and modern responsibility, becomes a beacon of growth and education for Morris Township. As lifelong members of our shared community and early investors in the New Jersey cannabis industry, we are here now to respond to Morris Township's reservations as they consider accepting potential cannabis ventures in our municipality. Thank you. We'll open the floor to any questions that you may have. Yes?
I have one. Bank Street Collective holds a Class 5
Conditional
conditional
retail license.
license, and one of your partners has a Class 1 for cultivation.
So Miles Hodges is a potential partner, and we've invited him here with us today. You had mentioned at your last cannabis advisory meeting that you wish that you could see an operation come together that was outside, of an MSO. That's something that you guys can speak with. When big money comes in, it's literally pretty much do what they want. But as far as cultivation, I'll let Miles speak to that if,
Yeah, before
if you
we
miss
do
me.
that, and thank you for just a second. I understood you to say that you actually are dreaming of a vertically integrated.
Right, so at the current time, New Jersey doesn't allow vertically integrated businesses.
No, that's sunsetted, February this year. You can now.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
Yay, good.
Since February, you can.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, with that, licenses are very expensive. We've spent a lot of money, close to 6 figures, probably that, just on lawyering and licensing and application alone, just for the class 5. So it makes sense for us to focus as a retail operation, a small family-owned retail operation, to focus on marketing and real estate and meeting with municipalities that will accept us because, as you know, the most important thing is gaining municipal support in order to convert unconditional into an annual license.
Thank you.
John, can you talk about the process Morristown put in place, how long it took, what you think was good about the process, and what may have created some roadblocks for you?
You want
Yeah, I'll just say, I would ask Susan to maybe speak on this a little bit because she has multiple clients who have gone through the application process in different municipalities. I could say that from what I've seen, everywhere is different. Morristown, I guess, kind of jumped out the gun. They opted in at the last minute and kind of formed a board where it was really unclear as how they made their decision. We know that there was a point system and different criteria to reach a certain point, and they added up the points from all the applicants, and it's still very unclear. We can't really litigate the decisions as we're trying to convert our application. So we believe it was a fast process. A lot of people have said that, but it's not the fault of the municipality. It's more so just the new industry, and everyone's just trying to figure it out. So.
How long, I'm sorry if I
Yeah,
jump
go
in here
ahead.
because I didn't have a client who was trying to locate in Morristown. And your turn, as you know, Lee Vartan, excellent.
Yeah,
He's
he's
wonderful.
pretty-
Yeah,
he's
he was
pretty
part,
cool.
he helped to author the original medical
Right.
law. But at any rate, most of the municipalities, what they're doing is putting out an RFP. And they are then, or RFA, I guess it would be, and are allowing usually somewhere between 30 and 45 days to actually apply, and then they're closing it. It's not a rolling application process typically. And then they have a board, right, or a committee that's usually made up of law enforcement, zoning, committee members, who are evaluating according to whatever their rubric is. They oftentimes on these applications will indicate a number of points for each section, right? And some will include, they like if you're a local, if you have ties to the local area, or they want to see what are you going to do for the local area. And then some of them will request odor mitigation plans. Everybody looks for your safety and security plan. So these are, pretty extensive applications. When I put them together for my clients, it can be, a couple hundred pages by the time that you have all the diagrams and, everything in there. So the window will close, and then you're going to need to give yourselves, probably a 60-day timeline to turn those around and evaluate them.
What I would say to that too, Mark, is I can't stress the importance of transparency when you guys are making decisions. Morristown put their RFP out 15 days before it was that they were going to accept the applications, and their application process was very extensive, which leads us to believe, and we can't really prove this right now, that they had already picked someone. They had picked who they had picked before the application process was complete. The ordinance was a copy and paste from many of the other ordinances of all over the state. We had actually been in talks with Morristown before they even wrote the ordinance, through our government affairs people and things like this. And the entire process was heartbreaking. To be completely honest, we grew up in Morristown. We didn't think that, not saying being nepotistic or anything like that, but we think that we had a good shot at least knowing the community, having played in baseball at Ginty Field and down at Tucker Field, and being community stakeholders are our lives, that and having a comprehensive plan. That's the most important thing. A comprehensive plan where we could work along with Morristown, that we would be able to have a decent shot. And just the feedback that we got, the lack of transparency that we got in the interim was just really disheartening. So again, I can't stress the importance enough of whatever the township decides to do, just make it as transparent as possible. The applicant, we heard a comment that the applications were too long. Our application was probably like close to 200 pages or something like that. Yeah, because they wanted everything, so we gave them everything. And the state has everything, the feds have everything, so we gave them everything plus more. And they had it just led us to believe they had already made their decision before.
So if I may, do you, and this is sort of a question for you, Jerron, as well as you, Suzanne, did at any time you get any feedback from Morristown regarding the why you didn't get the and then for you, is it typical that those who were unsuccessful, do they get some feedback as to why their application was denied?
So we had, thank you for that question. We had asked about the credentials and the experience of the Cannabis Advisory Board members and how they came with their scoring rubrics and things like this. They varied widely across all facets of the scoring rubric. So for instance, there was one applicant who their security plan was top notch. I think one of the members was on one of the teams that got Bin Laden or something like that. And that's what they.
Oh no, this is like, we've got the Surgeon General is on some of these applications in New Jersey.
It was everything that you could possibly need. And their scoring from one of the members was like non-existent. It was like a 0 or something like that. And he couldn't, so we had a meeting after the scoring to talk about a formal meeting with the town, why we were denied and things like this. And they gave us 5 or 10 minutes to speak about our experience and things like this. And he couldn't, for the life of him, understand how they didn't pass the security protocols that Morristown had laid out, which further led us to believe that they were just doing whatever they wanted to do over there. There's spelling errors in the ordinance. There's, it's all copy and pasted. They didn't even follow their own ordinance, which they said they were supposed to award licensees the license to do business in Morristown, depended on whether or not they had received a license from the state. At that time, none of the applicants had received a license from the state. So they had awarded a license to Uma Flowers. As far as we're concerned, cannabis is about convenience, and the vibe and the marketing. So we didn't care if all 6 of us were approved, right? It's just the lack of transparency is what really was disheartening for us.
I understand. I think you can probably Oprah some of those applications, right? So
we've done everything. We've done
and,
everything. They actually didn't allow us to see any of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's redacted, all these things.
Right.
Some recommendations I might consider, and based on some of the specific feedback. If you are creating a rubric, which I think is a good way to go, right, to have a point system. The entire board or committee, of course, can read the entire application, but it would make sense to have your security professional be the one who is exclusively reviewing any of those portions, right? And the only one who's handing out a score on those portions, right? And that someone who is an expert in another area, and maybe nobody's an odor mitigation expert, but they have to become an odor mitigation expert for the purposes of doing this, and they have to create a really detailed rubric, in order to score the applicant. So that's a recommendation that I would make. At the state level, most of these applications are no longer Oprahable, interestingly, because there's been so much litigation, and it's just so tricky, to come to conclusions. I think Ron Mondello, he's an attorney who did present here before. If I'm not mistaken, he's kept a running track of the litigation in municipalities related to cannabis, and a lot of it has to do with, licensing and all of that. So to answer your question, yes, we're seeing this. People, this is blood, sweat, tears, dreams, hope, passions, money, college funds, all of these things. And it's incredibly disheartening, when someone is not successful. And, whether that litigation has a successful outcome or not, doesn't mean that, you're not subjecting yourself to it by having some sort of competitive process.
And to be clear, we're not in litigation with Morristown right now, just.
Well, that's the other thing. If you ever want to locate, same thing with the state. Nobody wants to sue the state because they're the ones who eventually are going to give us a license or not, right? So, yeah.
So it sounds like it's not hard for a process like this and to be unsuccessful to have an extreme impact on the applicants. And some of that's probably just inherent to the work it takes to create the application and then not be awarded it. Are there aspects of, do you think there's aspects of the fact that it's cannabis or the fact that the municipalities are navigating this structure itself that's accidentally causing that experience? Or do you think it's inherent of the high cost of application combined with the, just the focus of you wouldn't only want one applicant anyway. You have to have probably 5 or 6. But
yeah, gosh, it's tricky. I don't know exactly. I think some of it is the conflict between what the state's trying to achieve with this and what these applicants are doing in order to be successful on the state level. And then that might not be the exact same thing that they need to do in order to be successful on the municipal level. I think that could be part of what we're seeing happen. Cannabis is tricky. I mean, I used to teach religion, now here I am, in this seat, and I couldn't be more passionate about, wanting this to be handled the right way in our communities, and to provide real opportunities for people. But there's a lot of stigma attached to it, and there's a lot of just sort of antiquated thinking around it. And that certainly bleeds into public policy making. And it could be due to anything that these things are happening.
Ron?
Excuse me.
Go ahead,
I'd like to ask, and I forgot your partner's name, I'm sorry.
Miles Hodges,
Miles,
Dr.
thank you
Hodges.
for coming.
Absolutely.
And you have a conditional license for cultivation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so you don't know exactly where that license is gonna go. You're looking for a.
I'm really excited to be here in Morristown to ask and support and hope that it could land here. Yeah, that's the goal.
Thank you.
Tron, who in the town, did they have to hire additional staff, do you know, to handle the application process? Did you go through the town clerk? How did that process work, do you know, or was
Business
it?
administrator, I believe.
Business administrator.
Morristown was, you mean their Cannabis Advisory Board? Or-
Yeah, just there's gotta be someone who has to handle all these records.
Right.
You're talking about 200-page report.
Right.
Times how many businesses are applying,
Right.
which for me, from my perspective, our staff are already overworked.
Right.
We don't have a lot of resources for someone to really do this on the side of their desk. So I was just curious if Morristown had outside help, or if they contractor that gave it to one of their law firms that they already have on retainer to do that, or what?
Right, so from what we understand, it was the Cannabis Advisory Board reviewing the applications, which was made up of the town administrator, I believe their attorney, the town's attorney, the chief of police, and the town planner, obviously for obvious zoning implications, and I want to say a couple.
Two committee members.
Right, 2 committee
Or
members.
council.
Yes, council.
Council members in Morristown, yeah.
Council, yeah.
Yeah.
Council members. It was handled by them for the most part. I don't believe they outsourced anything. And the beauty of it is you don't really need a cannabis advisory board to move forward with allowing cannabis in the municipality. Right?
Yeah. So just to clarify for the room too. So this board is called the Cannabis Advisory Board. I didn't realize Morristown's actually a regulatory board that oversaw the applications, was also named the same thing. We have absolutely no powers here in Morris Township as an advisory board, but theirs had all the power.
They didn't.
What you were,
No, they didn't. They made recommendations.
Okay.
They made recommendations to the council in which.
For the applications, though.
For the applications.
They were hearing
never got-
applications, they were looking at plans and everything.
So you never got to the planning board?
No, we never got to the planning board.
Did you present? Did you have to make a presentation though? And who did you present to?
No, we didn't. That's what
It's all on paper.
that's what led us to believe that they had already, so mind you, we own businesses in Morristown as well. My mom, owns Sandy's, who's, now she's moving to Morris Township, yay. So we, as business owners in the town, we understand, how the town works, and it's very, under the table type stuff that goes on in the township. That's why I can't stress enough.
Township.
I'm sorry, the town. I'm so sorry. I apologize, Mark. I apologize. So that's why I can't stress enough. And this is who I am. I speak open and honestly. We can't stress enough the importance of transparency going forward. Like, it's the wild east out here. There are townships that are charging $10,000-$15,000 for applications fees because they can. Then there are owners who are charging astronomical rents on leases to have the retail operations and cultivations because they can, because it's legal at the state level and federally illegal. So this is quasi judicial gray area. What do we do? They can do whatever they want until the feds come knocking at the door, and then whoever has the most money to fight in litigation wins at the end of the day, right? So the most important thing is transparency. I can't stress that enough. I can't stress that enough. Whatever the township decides to do, just make sure everybody sees everything.
Do you know how much the application fee was in Morristown?
Yeah, we it was $2,500.
Okay, so that's pretty low.
That's pretty standard though.
Yeah, standard.
I think Paramus was, everybody was like, it's $10,000 and not even allowing adult use. But $2,500 is fairly standard. The state is only, it's under $1,000 for conditional, it's not high. But of course, they have a whole staff to review these things.
You mentioned that you guys invested like just under 6 figures in the application process. If you were to apply to another
Time and money spent
yeah, of
over
course, yeah.
time, yes.
If you were to apply, like if you, let's say Morris Township were to open up to the application process and you were to translate your previous plans and the invested monies, do you have a sense of what percentage of that investment can be recouped or reapplied to another municipality application, or how much of it you'd have to do again in terms of your invested cost?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like if, let's say Morris Township said like, okay, we're gonna accept applications in 30 days, we're gonna have a 15-day window open. And yes, there might be differences between the two application processes. Do you guys have a sense of how much of what you've already invested would be already, applied, and how much more you'd have to do again to apply to a different municipality? Like in general, like is the attorney fees already covered 80% or something?
Well, our attorney's on retainer, so he works for us by the hour. But I think that the application process in Morris Township would be up to the township.
Yeah.
And whatever the fee, because we're not going. Attorney Mr. Mondello said that it's going to be a 90-10 game. 90% of the applicants in 2 years are going to be gone, and we want to be part of the 10%. So if Morris Township would have put out an application tomorrow with a 15-day window, we're ready to go yesterday.
Yeah.
It just then comes down to municipal support, and then proper zoning, and real estate. And there's not that much that we see in Morris Township that for right now, unless that changes.
So let me ask a question. This could go to Jerron. Thank you for coming back. I know you were at a previous meeting. And Suzanne, we're talking about a process. I lost my train of thought for a second. Another question, and I'll come back to me. I think that's something that was
Mark, I got one real quick. So, you're aware of Uma Flowers. They're going to go in at some point in Morristown. Sounds like you're still interested in, if we decide to allow licenses to apply for a retail one in Morris Township. Why do you think that would work in light of the proximity to the facility that's going to be in Morristown?
Because we're hometown heroes. Everybody knows who we are.
So you're going to, and my question is, so the customers, you're going to market it in a way that will take customers from?
It won't take customers from them. It's cannabis. Cannabis is about convenience, and it's a culture, right? To be completely transparent, my first encounter with cannabis was probably 5, 6, or 7 years old when I found a nickel bag in my mom's pocketbook looking for a chewing gum.
Okay.
And
But
she
you guys
asked
are
me,
gonna say
she asked me if I wanted it to throw it away. And something in me said yes. I didn't know what it was. It just looked like, I didn't know what it was, you know. I start consuming cannabis in high school, probably my sophomore year. So this is more cultural for me than anything else. People around us in Morristown know who we are. Morris Township, Morris County area know who we are. I came through Borough School. We came through the high school. We came through. I'm a true graduate. This is where we are. We have over 200 signatures in support, local signatures in support of our business venture, at a location that we own in Morristown that was denied. So now, to answer your question, buying something, purchasing something going forward might not be a viable option unless we have investors and we have partners like the Hodges and the other people who we've tapped in our network, who will tap in our network. We would have to lease a space because I doubt that where Morris Township decides to zone anything, that the owners would want to give up that space, because cannabis is a lucrative industry. They're going to want to keep that long-term, reliable tenant for years and years until they can't do it anymore, right? What would separate us from Uma Flowers? We're not Uma Flowers. We're not a multi-state operator who was first who was a team of doctors who understands the medical side. We are a recreational cannabis operator who is culturally ingrained in the plant, who understands the plant and what it does to, what it has done to society, how it's been stigmatized, how it has changed lives, and it's bigger than cannabis for us. It's about building generational wealth. This is, for me personally, my brother can speak to something else, but this is like my Tesla before my SpaceX. You know, this is how I raise and continue to raise my daughter and my soon-to-be son in our backyard, and continue to have business here in the town instead of moving somewhere else where I don't know. I'm familiar with my backyard, and it makes sense for me to educate the people here at home moving forward about the culture of cannabis, just and how it relates to us as a family, as a unit, as a vertically integrated 100% owned family unit. And it's part of American heritage. We have a small business, we build it up from the bottom.
Okay.
Last question.
I remember my train of thought. You brought up something that nobody else has brought up, Ron, and talking about the RFA and a window. So, I mean, I had no idea, because typically, from what I understand, a business wants to come into town, they come before the board of, the planning board, or if they need a variance, the board of adjustment. But you're saying that towns say that, okay, we have a window of 15 to 30 days. If we approve a license, that's it? Or is it just, we're just, okay, well, it's going to be here. This is where it's going to be, zoned for this use. And then there's an application time, or is just going to sit out there until someone says, we want to do it? Because typically, it comes before the planning board.
It's still will go to the planning board.
That's just
Yeah,
a
so
plan
it's
application.
Yeah.
when we
So
say-
So
it
do we need
depends
to
how the
have-
municipality has legislated for it, because if there's a limit on the number that will be selected, then typically there's a finite period of time during which folks can submit applications and those are processed. If there's not, so I have clients, for example, in Atlantic City who have not capped the number of licenses that are there. They passed a permissive ordinance, and then, you just get on the agenda and you get your resolution of support, and, you're off to the races. I don't think when I was on the slide there, actually, I was talking too about, I guess I didn't actually highlight these numbers, but I'll circulate it. that said how many retail dispensaries there are in certain, municipalities. It's all over the place. But typically, if there is a limit, then it's a finite application period of time because it's been a competitive process. So other businesses in your municipality are not typically, you don't have a law that says we can only have 2 sneaker stores or whatever it is, right? So it's not the same sort of process.
Okay, that was interesting to note that. Thank
Don't
you.
you still then have to go through a separate site plan approval after you have your
Yes, you
license?
would
That
have to,
would be
yeah.
step 1. Step 2 is, so they'd still have to come to the planning
Right.
board.
It sounds to me,
But it's because it's a permit, it would be a permitting.
it sounds to
use.
me like 15 days is too short
What-
to really
So the state,
do a response unless you have a pre-packaged plan.
right,
you know?
yeah,
And I think typically if you're doing an RFQ or an RFP,
RFA.
it's like 30
Yeah,
to 45 days.
but what happens is you may pass a permissive ordinance. Okay, if anybody wants to locate here, they know every single word in that permissive ordinance, and
Okay.
they are prepared, right? And the state has shorter turnaround times on certain things. Yes, it could be, where the holdup could be is if you're requiring site plan approval and then folks aren't able to get on an agenda, then that's where, okay, now we're, a little tricky.
I got one quick follow-up,
Yeah.
if I may, Mark. So if a municipality goes the RFA route, but only get one application, are they stuck with accepting that one?
No, because I would put in your ordinance up to 1,
Okay,
and then you don't need to have any.
okay.
If you decide you don't like the applicant, you might have 12 applicants and you don't want any of them there, and you don't have to do it.
John, any closing statements on the wrap up? We're at 8:00, 8:07.
I'd just like to thank you all for the time that you are taking to be here and learn about cannabis, particularly having it in our backyard in a municipality. I'm 37. Full disclosure, I do not purchase cannabis from any of the dispensaries in New Jersey. I had until I got a moldy batch from, and I said I wasn't going to purchase anymore until I purchased in bulk for the Bain Street Collective, which would be grown through our cultivators and manufacturers. So again, I really would like to thank you all for being here, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak, Mark. I really appreciate it. I throw it to my brother for any last comments and Miles for any last comments.
I thought that presentation was unbelievably thorough. As a entrepreneur and somebody who's been running around the state for the last 2 years, it really is a pleasure to hear this conversation happening. That journey has led to this partnership with Duran and showing up as physical kind of representation that we would be here on the cultivation side. As you're aware, the square footage and all of those things applies to us. We have spent, not just the time, but the mission-driven energy really to think through what we're doing on everything from odor mitigation to community engagement. And so this is something that makes a ton of sense for us. There are all of those challenges on the business startup side too, which I imagine Susanna could have given another 45-minute presentation on just on that. And so we've got that point, and we're excited and hopeful that you kind of lean into the wise advice and here to be good stewards of the business and of the community when and if hopefully we can. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I have one question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but if the township, like if Morris Township were to award a license, like a class 5 license to a dispensary, does it work like liquor licenses? Does that owner of that license get to sell to someone else later, or does it go
No,
back to the
there's a
town?
lot of state regulations around the sale or transfer of
Okay.
licenses. And it all needs to be approved by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Any sale or transfer usually can't happen for a couple of years. One of the things that will be required by the state is that the local municipality is approving of certain things.
So it wouldn't go back to this process we're talking about creating, but there's a different process that has municipal input of like how it would transition to
Yes,
an owner.
have you been advised about all of the ways that the municipalities are asked to provide input to the state?
That we have, but it
Yeah.
didn't focus on sale
On
of existing
transfer,
licenses.
yeah,
so
it's
that's
very
why I was
hard
curious.
to transfer these, but if that's a concern, and it's not a bad one, you know, you can always put another layer of protection in your ordinance, your process. Like in your license, you could decide then down the road too, if you have a renewal.
Yeah.
Right, that there's certain information that needs to be submitted and reviewed.
All right. Thank you, Jerron.
Thank you.
Company.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes,
Thank you everyone for
thank you.
being here.
Thank you.
Before we close out, so our next meeting, which will be the final meeting, will be November 1st at 6:30 PM. We'll be in the larger room. We'll take public comment in person and virtually. And then we'll have a discussion of the board before we gavel out to write our report and recommendations to the governing body. If you missed the prior meetings that go back to August 10th, you can find the recordings on our website as well as the agendas. And we also have a frequently asked questions document on there for members of the public to take a look at as well, to answer any questions you might have. Our goal is to have the report and recommendations to the township committee by the end of the year. And once that is complete, it'll be posted to the township website, and we'll send that information out as well. So with that, we'll end for the night, and we'll see everyone on November 1st. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody for coming.